Live from Arlington, Virginia, this is Transport Topics Newsmakers, the digital interview series that gives you access to candid conversations between industry experts and a veteran reporter. Thanks go to our sponsor, Fullbay. Here's your host, Dan Ronan.
Welcome to the latest edition of Newsmakers from Transport Topics. I'm Dan Ronan. I'm honored to host this conversation with leading figures in the trucking, freight, and logistics industries. Our guest is one of the industry's leaders when it comes to the exciting work that's being done to electrify the trucking industry and fuel trucks with hydrogen. We welcome Trevor Milton. He joins us on the Newsmaker line. Trevor is the executive chairman and the founder of Nikola Motor Company. Normally, we'd like to be face-to-face in these interviews, and maybe in the future we will be. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, as you all know, we've been adjusting, and many of us are working from home the last several months. However, we know that the men and women who keep the freight moving, the drivers and others who are on the road, they don't have that luxury, and we salute their professionalism and the ability to just get the job done. Before we begin our conversation with Trevor, I want to tell you that Fullbay is our sponsor for this edition of Newsmakers. We have a short message that they'd like to convey to all of you. So let's watch this message together, and we'll be back on the other side with Trevor Milton.
The future of trucking is here, and so is the future of truck repair. Fullbay puts the flexibility and power you need to run a heavy-duty repair shop in the palm of your hand. You won't be chasing after mountains of paperwork or staring at spreadsheets in the back office anymore. Want to know if your techs are as efficient as they could be? Pull real-time reports on their jobs and see how long specific tasks are taking them. Better yet, give them access to Fullbay's industry-leading integrations. Boost their productivity with labor guides, parts cross-reference, and diagnostic guides. Streamline your administrative work with clear, concise service orders and invoices created within minutes. You can even sync your financials with QuickBooks. And don't forget inventory management. You'll know where your parts are, which ones you need to order, and how to mark them up easily. And if you're ready to grow your business, Fullbay makes it easy to track preventive maintenance for fleets so they can keep trucks on the road. Plus, receive emergency service requests from leading providers automatically. And get this, you won't need to play phone tag to get authorizations for parts and service. Customers can check in on repairs and even authorize actions right from the customer portal. Best of all, Fullbay lives in the cloud, so you can check in on the shop from anywhere, at any time, even your backyard. See how Fullbay can help your business at fullbay.com/future.
During his relatively short number of years in the trucking industry, it's safe to say that Trevor Milton has made quite an impact. Just last week, the company he founded, Nikola Motors, broke ground on a new electric truck facility in Coolidge, Arizona. That's about an hour outside of Phoenix. The company says once it's operational, the plant that is valued at about $600 million initially will create 1,800 new jobs and produce 35,000 hydrogen fuel trucks. The company he founded in 2014 is now valued at $7.5 billion. Trevor, welcome to Newsmakers. Glad to have you along with us, and thanks for taking time to join us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about the early phases of construction and the development of the plant. These are going on during the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in your home state of Arizona. What's taking place there? And tell us a little bit about the groundbreaking from the other day.
Yeah, so we just broke ground on our factory just a couple days ago in Coolidge, Arizona. And that factory is going to have 3 phases. The first phase is going up right now, and it'll be operational in the next 12 to 14 months. So that means we'll actually be building units off of the assembly line in the next 12 to 14 months out of our plant in Coolidge, Arizona. So in this first phase, you have trucks come down the assembly line. They're very manually built. There's not an enormous amount of robotics. It's very manual with these trucks. We have a big inventory warehouse. We have parts. We have receiving. We have finished goods, everything else. So as phase 2 and 3 comes in, you get into the really complex paint assembly lines and other things that kind of go off and go robotic. But as of right now, a lot of that will be done manual. So that's already kicked off, and 12 to 14 months we'll be spitting trucks out of there, in limited runs, just as we scale up.
How long will it take to get to the point where you're at the big number that you want to, into the tens of thousands? How long are you looking at?
3 to 4 years. We get up there. The big problem is not being able to build trucks. I mean, to be honest with you, building trucks is is not that hard to do technically. They're a lot easier than cars because semi trucks are very, very manual. So they're just, it's more following assembly processes, drawings, and training the technicians on the line. It's not like you're dealing with thousands of robots that you have to dial in perfectly. So the semi trucks are actually a lot easier to build. The biggest problem we have is making sure your trucks are on the road testing with fleets and that all the bugs are out of them, because we worry. That's what keeps me up at night. When people say, Trevor, what keeps you up at night? It's trucks breaking down on the freeway and, a driver being stranded, and that's just not acceptable. So that's the area that we have to really kind of lock before you run.
Do you have any concerns at all, especially as we talked about your home state, Arizona, is in the midst of this horrible illness, the COVID-19 pandemic? Any concerns about getting people hired, anything along those lines, at least in the initial stages?
It's been tough. It's I'm not really sure what's going to happen with this whole coronavirus, because every week you turn around, it feels like someone has a different opinion. And it's really hard to run a company when every politician has a different opinion and every person has a different opinion. We definitely want to keep our construction wise, the good news is people have a lot of distance between each other when they're working. So we shouldn't see that big of an effect when it comes to construction. But when it comes to the actual assembly line, we're definitely gonna have to figure out what other OEMs have done, how they've protected their employees, and kind of just go off of what other people have already learned, because it's kind of a complicated mess, to be honest with you.
You're a relatively new person in the trucking industry, 7 or 8 years in. And I'm curious to know, why do you believe so passionately that hydrogen fuel cells and electrification is going to be the way that trucking has to move forward in the next 10 to 15 years? What is the marker on this for you that you believe this is the way we're going to go?
Yeah, I love trucking. I mean, I've been in the heavy duty business for trucking for sure that long, and the heavy duty well over 10 years, 10 to 15 years. And I started recalibrating engines more than 10 years ago to become more efficient. And then I got into hydrogen and natural gas storage on vehicles. So one of the things I love, like you'll hear a story about it with our president, with our CEO, Mark Russell. Over Thanksgiving, I was at a truck stop, just interviewing truck drivers. I truly love the trucking industry. I mean, most people are with their families or whatever. I mean, I was out at a truck stop interviewing truck drivers on Thanksgiving. And because I knew it was a day where they would be very open to talking, because they're kind of lonely on that day, And I was like, it's a perfect day to go where everyone's going to slow down. They're going to want to talk to you. And I took books of notes about everything they loved about trucks, that they hated about trucks. And you'll never find these other startups. They don't do that stuff. They just send some analysts to go talk to some trucking owners and get a survey built. I've been in this for more than a decade. I love trucking. I know most costs of trucking. I understand how fuel's bought, how freight's moved, where the corridors are. I understand the cost of my truck from the top to the bottom, every nut and bolt. And my competitors just don't know that. When it comes to clean energy, they just don't have a clue about that with the trucking world. And that's why we've been able to make zero emission finally work with trucks for the first time in history.
I read an article recently that said that you said, I believe in the next 10 to 15 years that diesel will be banned around the world. This puts you in a pretty good position if indeed this happens, but that's faster than what a lot of people have said. Do you see the political process, places like the California Air Resources Board and others, which have taken aggressive stands saying we need to move out of diesel in a pretty quick way? 10 to 15 years is pretty quick.
Yeah, look, I'm not a big guy into forcing people to do anything. I kind of hate it. I came from a pretty freedom-related family, right? My entire life was around. You should never be forced to do anything in life. You should. So what I did is, when I built Nickel, is I wanted to build a truck that would actually create a desire for people to move away from diesel, with better performance, better efficiency, better driving capability, safer for their family, quieter, and if you can pass a diesel on a 6% grade, going faster, and it's all silent and it's fun. And that's what's going to convert people away from diesel to zero emission. And look, I do know that the governments are going to ban diesel altogether. It's just coming. There's nothing anyone can do about it, because the world kind of follows each other, right? Like Europe's already done it, and the US is in the process of it right now. So people are going to be, the states are going to ban diesels altogether. My desire is to give them a truck that is so much more fun, so much more powerful, so much more safe, and allow them to migrate naturally where they're excited to come over. I don't want to force someone to drive a zero emission truck. I want I want that zero emission truck to whoop a diesel, and then it's all of a sudden fun to drive, and that's how competition should be, in my opinion.
You recently opened up reservations on the new Badger truck that has a range of about 600 miles a day. That's 100 miles more than the Tesla Cybertruck. And when you began taking the reservation, your stock did very well. Do you see your company moving in several directions with a Class 8 heavier truck that we've talked about, and trucks that will work for folks who are construction workers who have their own small businesses? Is that what you want to do, create up a two-track?
So people ask, they say, why'd you go into the consumer business? I mean, we've focused entirely on heavy duty transport and commercial transportation. So here's the reason why. Even though a semi truck touches every person's life in America, less than 1% of people will ever own a semi truck, ever. So the problem is the investor base and the money, and you think about the big funds, they'll never own a semi truck. So it's hard for people to invest in something that they can't touch and that doesn't directly affect them with their hands. Now, trucking does affect them, but as you said in this coronavirus, people just believe food magically appears in grocery stores. And so it does not, like, you can't touch these people where they get excited to invest in something without actually touching the consumer. So we built this we took $1 billion platform from our semi truck that we built, the most advanced fuel cell electrification platform in the world. And we built an electric pickup truck where people can order it with either battery electric or hydrogen electric. And with that, we've been able to create a following of millions of investors and followers around the world that love Nikola. And it's because those people will touch a pickup truck, or they will drive in one, or they'll touch an off-road vehicle or a wave runner. Those are all kind of our consumer products. And that's how you bring the money comes from the truck, the consumer, and the investment and the valuation comes from the consumerism.
So there's a much bigger market. I mean, you see a lot more Dodge and Ford trucks out there, Nissan trucks out there on the marketplace than you do certainly semis, Class 8s.
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the only automotive programs that's ever been profitable through the history of automotive has been the Ford F-150. Regardless of what the market does, it's a profitable segment. And so that's a holy grail of trucks. And that's what we targeted was really that work truck, Ford F-150, consumer Badger truck, the Raptor, kind of industry. And that's what we targeted because it's a profitable industry. And I'd like to be profitable because I tell people you can't be environmentally sustainable if you're not financially sustainable. It's one of my favorite quotes in life that I came up with. And it really is, because I don't like touching markets where you don't make money, because it does a disservice to your employees. Eventually you will collapse if you don't have government credits like some of the other companies rely on. So that's why we targeted that industry.
You have your critics, though. I mean, I've got a statement here from one, and you said this not right too long ago. The only thing people have against us is that we don't produce anything, and we just laugh at that. It took 10 years, Tesla necessarily, nearly 10 years to get where it is today, and it took many years to get where we are now. It took us 1 year to get to where we now are in our first year. I mean, you have your critics, though, who say that, you're not really doing anything and that it's all smoke and mirrors. How do you address those?
Yeah, we get them. It's kind of fun. I mean, I kind of eat it up. I mean, look, they're relentless. Anyone who's never been in this position, I mean, sometimes I'll get 10,000 messages a day from people that are they just hate you and despise you. And you just you have to learn to not let it get to you. You have to learn to feed off of it. Like, you're like, that's okay. Like, with those critics come other people that are reasonable. I like to deal with the reasonable people in the world, and I don't mind if people don't like us, and I don't mind if people question how we got to where we are. But the way the answer that is this: Nikola is a very unique company. We develop what we call the core of the technology is all Nikola. Like in a human body, it would be the arteries and the heart, and it would be all the veins going through the body. And so it's the most important. It's what keeps the vehicle who it really is. So that would be things like the e-axle, the inverters, the batteries, the battery technology, the software, the controls, the human interface, the HMI. Those are the things that are really important in Nikola, and we develop all that in-house. And then where people criticize us is where we outsource stuff, and I'll explain that now. Tesla, our biggest competitor, is all about doing everything themselves. They will essentially do everything in-house, including their seats. So what Nikola does, what we don't do is I don't believe that philosophy. Now I could be wrong. I could be proven wrong in the future. So don't, no one knows the perfect answer. But my belief is that I should be able to, I build parts that have a 2 or 3 or 4% margin. It just makes no sense. Like I don't want to build a seat, or I think I lost you guys.
You're back. You go ahead. You're good.
Are you there? Sorry, I think we cut out for a second. I'm not sure if you're back yet or not.
No, you're good.
You're back?
You're good.
Okay. So we essentially outsource the parts. Okay, we outsource the parts to be made. We develop all the core technology in-house and we own it. So I don't want to make like an e-axle. I design, engineer it, and I send it out to get made in the thousands. So we have other people make our parts, but we own all the IP. And I think that's a lot of people they don't like that. Like the kind of the Tesla following has always been do everything in-house and never outsource. I just have a different philosophy because that's just that's how the automotive world's been. I mean, they outsource these parts to suppliers that are experts at it.
One of the things that your company wants to do is build a business model along the vertical integration model, which includes building a network of 700 hydrogen stations and starting on that in 2020. You've outsourced that too. You've got a contract in place on that. How are you going to get to that point where you've got the hydrogen stations and the fuel, which I understand will be produced on site? And how are you going to pull this all together?
Yeah, so the biggest problem with hydrogen for the history of time, I mean, Toyota pioneered a lot of stuff in hydrogen, but they did a terrible job at selling it. The reason why is there was no network for it. Tesla built a supercharging network so people could go drive across country. You need a network of hydrogen or your vehicles are worthless. So what we do is we do it one at a time. This is a really important fact. When Nikola builds a route, we pre-sell the route to people like Anheuser-Busch. We go and we point A to point B. This would be their distribution center to some other to the brewery, and that trucks run that same route every day of its life. So we target only dedicated vehicles only for the first, say, 5 to 10 years, because there's enough of them to give you nationwide coverage. So we do one route at a time. We put a station in the middle and we sell all those trucks. And then that way that station is 100% utilized day one. We are partnering with people to help us grow that network, but we're building 700 stations on our own throughout America. And that'll give us complete coverage through the whole United States. And that's only with dedicated routes. So let's just take let's take like the West Coast. If you have these routes of California, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Utah, and you've got like 10 or 15 routes on there that are pre-sold with trucks running, anyone who owns a truck in that network, in that area, can buy a truck and they can drive wherever they want. They'll always have stations. So as time goes on, you end up allowing people to buy trucks that don't run dedicated routes. They can drive anywhere they want. But you got to make sure those dedicated routes are put in first. And that was the key to this business model, is providing the chicken and the egg at the exact same time, or the whole thing falls apart.
Almost like a spider web.
Yeah, it is. It's very similar to that. And the cost of hydrogen is so expensive that if we don't take it on, it's impossible. So when we started, hydrogen was $16 a kilogram. We're down now to around $3 a kilogram. And diesel parity's at $4. So we're already 20 to 30% cheaper than diesel now. So it's game over. I mean, it's only a matter of time now until people don't buy diesel, not for any other reason other than the fact that it's just more expensive to drive a diesel now.
But habit is one thing, because everybody knows in the trucking industry how to use diesel. It's abundant, it's available. How do you convince an industry which has been run on diesel for 100 years to change and make a big fundamental change? You primarily do it through education. I mean, the key is to get these dedicated routes running, which we're doing right now. And once they can see those trucks driving on the road and they see the hydrogen station, their range anxiety goes away. That's one advantage of hydrogen. You don't have the range anxiety. You can go 500, 600, 700 miles on a fill up of hydrogen with a full load, and you don't run out of energy. In a battery electric vehicle, you do. And we sell battery electric as well. So I'm not against battery electric. Battery works really good within a city, but it works very poorly on a freeway. And that's where hydrogen makes a lot of sense, is OTR. As you're over the road, you want to move a lot of freight that's weight sensitive, and you want to turn quickly, and you want to fill in 15 minutes. That's hydrogen. And that's why I said that the two technologies will always coexist, because they don't really even compete with each other. They're completely different
market segments.
I was reading some of your tweets the other day. You're a pretty prolific guy on Twitter. And one of them said, if you have asked me about Hyliion, hashtag Hyliion, I don't believe that anything with emissions will survive, regardless of carbon neutral. Most states will mandate zero emission. They will need their own chassis as omens, which will circumvent them. Retrofit won't work. Happy to advise them for free. What's behind this?
That's where I started. I actually want to see those guys succeed. I mean, they're our competitor, and we're going to be pretty brutal with them because it's, obviously they're our competitor and we're going to go to win. But I also have a lot of sympathy for them because that's where I started. There's no one that knows natural gas trucking better than
that's where your beginning was.
That's where I started. I pioneered most of all the patents around natural gas and how it works within a truck, and they're actually using our patents now. And it's a very difficult industry because emissions are going to be banned. So I just don't think that that's an industry where you should go. I think you should go towards zero emission, not towards somewhere in the middle. And that's the business model I had 6 years ago. And so I've already learned my lessons, and I hope they pivot towards a zero emission chassis, and they got to build their own. Like I'm telling you right now, I've worked with Peterbilt, Volvo, Daimler. If you are a supplier to those guys, you will most likely only be a supplier for 2 to 3 years. They come in, they find out everything about you, and then they essentially build something cheaper and stop buying from you, because that's the way you drive your costs down. So they're going to be replaced if they work on someone else's chassis. It's a total disaster and a mistake. So they need to go build their own truck. They need to build it from the ground up. And that's the only way you'll ever have a future is if you own your own truck. Being a supplier, they're going to run, and also a supplier of emissions. I mean, that's a tough world to be in.
The follow-up to that was one of the responses was from one of your critics was they're profitable and actually have a factory that exists. Stop it. How do you answer when people, we talked about this before, when people say, well, they're actually doing something, they've got brick and mortar, they're doing it?
That's okay. I mean, we're not trying to compete against like this idea of like, oh, you have how many trucks, people say, oh, Tesla has more trucks in space than you, Trevor. And it's like, I always laugh at that. I'm like, well, one, it's not true. We have trucks on the road that we test. And someone just asked, how much road testing have you been done with the hydrogen fuel cell? We've ran a couple loads, a couple times on the road, but we only do track testing because of safety. So our vehicles are being track tested heavily almost every single day. We only do a couple road tests, and we'll do a couple more, later this year. But it's not about, this is the thing, it's not about like how quick you get to market for 500,000 in revenue. I could care less about 500,000. I'm going towards tens of billions. So for us, when we roll out, we're coming in like a freight train. We've got $1 billion in cash in our account right now. We've got over $10 billion in lease reservations for our truck, and we stopped taking orders. If I wanted to, I could log probably 30 to 40 billion in orders. We're very, very sold out, and I'm busy executing my business model. So I don't really listen to a lot of the noise of people that have no idea what they're talking about or even just nice people that are just wondering. I just can't get into, I can't worry about the noise or I will get distracted. Like the most important thing I do is execute my vision, and we're going to be the most valuable trucking brand in the world in the next 3 years. So, I mean, they can go do what they want, but they're not going to ever be that. It's they're going down a rabbit hole that is not, I don't think is sustainable with the government regulations coming. It's just my opinion.
One of the things that concerns folks in trucking is the idea of having their trucks serviced. And diesel trucks are very complex machines. Electric trucks and hydrogen fuel trucks, one of the advantages I'm told is that they'll be simpler to operate and have less moving parts. You have a service agreement that's in place, I understand, with Ryder that you've implemented. How's this going to work?
So we did work with Ryder exclusively, and we just recently, I think it was like 3 or 4 months ago, we decided to open up to everyone, and we're signing dealerships across the country. We have a guy named Pablo who's in charge of all of our dealership networks. He came over from Caterpillar, brilliant guy. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever met, and he's setting up our dealership network around the country. We'll have hundreds of existing truck dealerships that'll allow us to sell, service, and warranty our trucks. And that's a big one for us, is we didn't want to be limited to one group. We wanted to open up everybody. So that's what we're doing right now. It's going to take in each one of these dedicated routes, we'll work with the network in that area to support them. And eventually, over the next 10 years, we'll have complete coverage in the United States. And look, this is a 10-year play. We've been public for less than 1 month. And it's incredible, that people have, it just takes time. It takes time. We've been public 1 month. It's going to take, a few years to really get this whole thing greased and running really smooth and growing. But this next year is going to be an incredible year for us.
But in your words, there is a revolution that's starting, though, and it's going to be incremental, but it is taking place. In the way you describe it, this industry will be completely different in 10 to 15 years with hydrogen and electrification from where we're at now.
Yeah, it's going to all change. I mean, look, I think in 10 years, you almost won't even be able to buy a diesel anymore. I think they're going to shut the assembly lines down completely. And the reason why is it's more expensive. And there's two things: government regulations, one, but the second one is that we're now 20% cheaper than diesel to operate. How could you ever buy it? I mean, trucking operates on 10% margins. So it's like, you think about that, like these big trucking companies like England or Swift or Knight, most of them are down in that range. Not all of them. I'm just talking in general. But if you're 20% cheaper than diesel, that's game over. You're going to go bankrupt if you're running a diesel. So I think in time now, everyone's picked up on it. Toyota, Volvo, Daimler, they're all moving towards hydrogen. And you're going to see every one of them come out with full hydrogen products. And they'll also be filling at our stations, which is great for us.
And your plan is then to have the business plan is to bundle the fuel and the trucks together in one big package, so it's all under your umbrella.
Exactly. I mean, look, when you buy a diesel, you pay $150,000 for the truck, right? Well, not everyone. Some of it's $100,000. Some people pay $150,000. Depends on the model. But the funny thing is, whenever you buy a truck, $1 million of that goes to the oil company over time. So the oil companies make all the money. They laugh. Like every time Peterbilt sells a truck, the oil companies are clapping their hands. And what's interesting is the oil companies are the ones now saying, look, we got to get into hydrogen because hydrogen is going to replace diesel. Like we got to figure out a way to do this. And so what we wanted to do is take all that revenue in. So when you buy a Nikola truck, we get the money for the truck, but we also get the life of the fuel revenue. So we make 5 times more revenue than our competitors per truck we sell. And that's why Nikola's valuation, I mean, I think today it's around 13, 14 billion, whatever. In the past it's been higher, it goes lower, but we have, it goes up and down. It's a publicly traded company, but I think by year's end, we're going to have one of the greatest rallies we've ever seen because of what we're about ready to announce over the coming months leading up to Nikola World that we've been very public about is incredibly great news. And it allows, like, you're going to see us become, I think, the most valuable brand of any trucking company in the world. And that's because we've controlled the chicken and the egg, and we're all about zero emissions, and our competitors are going to fuel at our network. So we're really an energy company that happens to sell cool vehicles is what we are.
You've had your share of disagreements with folks in the media, Bloomberg News, CNBC, and others, but it seems that you like being in the arena and you like mixing it up with journalists.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a pretty fun guy, and I'm really open to people in ways that most executives aren't. So I have a hard time when someone lies or withholds information. For instance, the Bloomberg one was a tough one for me because the whole interview was recorded. They promised to send us a recording afterwards, and then they took it and it was a complete lie, and they wouldn't even they wouldn't release the recording. I'm like, how much of a hit job is this? And so I learned a lesson now that I won't do an interview unless we can record it ourselves, just to protect me. And it was a big hit job. But look, if someone's going to do that to me, I'm going to come at them. It's who I am, but I'm also the most accessible, nicest guy in the world. So the reason why I hit back so hard is because I'm actually I'm a sensitive person. Like I'm a relationship guy. Like I truly just love people. I like people. I want to have good. I believe this life is hard enough as it is, and I want people to. I just want those connections and those relationships. And when someone stabs you in the back and they just lie just blatantly, I have a hard time with that. So I'm a very vocal person, and so I have some fun with it. But when someone lies or is deceitful, I have issue with that because there's no place in life for people like that. Like I've gotten rid of all those people in my life, and the people around me are just good people. Because I don't have time for negativity. Like I have enough problems to solve every day. So it's a little bit of just who I am. It's probably just because I'm a little too sensitive. I'm a real person. I have a family. Like sometimes I have great days, sometimes I have bad days, sometimes I break down, and you have tears of pain and joy and heartache. I'm a real person. And so it's like when someone betrays me or lies to me, I have a problem with that. And so, there's probably better ways to do it. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, but you know what? I'd rather be a good person and sensitive than a complete a-hole that just blocks everyone off and doesn't give any interviews. And that's just who I am. I'd rather be nice.
Well, we'd love to get you back again here on Newsmakers on Transport Topics, and certainly on Transport Topics Radio here on Sirius XM that we do as well. Trevor, thanks for joining us. I appreciate you making time out of your vacation to spend about 30 minutes with us and talk about the future of the electric and the hydrogen industry. If someone is going to be looking out in Coolidge, Arizona, are you guys hiring yet?
We are starting to. Most of it will be through our contractor with Wallbridge as they're building out all these factories. And then we're working with the state to create a hiring plan we're hiring, over 1,500 workers there at the plant. We'll probably be close to 3,000 over time. So yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool. And you'll see that through our careers page at careers.nikolamotor.com. And you'll also see it through the state. So I appreciate having you guys, having me on. I love trucking more than anything in this life. It's where I came from. It's who made me who I am today. And so it's a beautiful thing, and it runs on pennies. And this is how you make big change in life. So all the people out there that are moving freight, and all I can tell you is thank you so much. I know a lot of people don't appreciate you. I do. And a lot of times you'll find me down there on Thanksgiving handing out food or talking to you guys, because that's where I came from, man. So thanks so much everybody for having me.
Coming to a truck stop near you?
Yes, for sure. No doubt.
Trevor, thanks again. In closing, we want to thank our sponsor, Fullbay, for making this Transport Topics Newsmaker webcast possible. We appreciate their fine support. We also want to thank Trevor Milton for being generous with his time to answer our questions. Going forward, we are planning more of these Newsmakers in the near future, and we will have an announcement soon about when the next webcast will take place and who the guest will be. I know that you'll want to join us, and we are very excited about this upcoming announcement. Also, this webcast will be available for viewing on demand. Go to ttnews.com for more information, how you can watch our interview with Trevor Milton. Again, I'm Dan Ronan with Transport Topics. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information on future episodes, visit ttnews.com. This has been Transport Topics Newsmakers.